Hi everyone. Happy Thursday out there. I hope you are having a good week and that you're doing okay. I know it's been a hard enough week for a lot of people around there, so take care of yourself if you're not doing so well. And over here we've been I seem to start every Thursday as saying we're fairly busy, but we started off the week where on Monday myself, Laura and Nadia met up in Dublin at Showcase exhibition. It's an Irish exhibition. It's aimed at wholesale customers, so for people who perhaps are looking for, normally it would be shops and things like that, and there's nothing sold directly. You just go in and you get to take a look around at different products and new people that are there. And it's first year that I've gone up where I've been really looking at stuff. I've gone before just to kind of support people in the yarn industry and a few other things. I've never really contemplated doing it myself because I don't wholesale in Ireland. I mainly sell direct. And while my yarn is in shops, it's only very specifically through different lines with my distributor. But when we were up there, what we ended up doing is we found some really, really beautiful craft items, handmade items like paper products, soap and beauty products like lip balms and creams, and some other little accessories and things that I think are going to be absolutely amazing additions to the Seasons Club and to the Celtic Knits Club for this year and also for next year. So it means that we were able to see them all in person, talk with the makers and get a really good feel for the kind of products they're producing. So it'll really be a big help in expanding the range of items that we're able to stock. So that's really good. So also this morning, do I sell in Etsy or Amazon? No, I don't. I don't do Etsy just directly on my own website. I do have patterns still up on Ravelry. And I know some of my books, which I've done, there's 2 books, Short Row Knits and also Contemporary Irish Knits, which I've done with publishers, and both of those would be available through Amazon, but that's via the publisher as opposed to me directly. For the most part, in terms of selling, my general policy is to kind of do it directly myself, because that way I can actually control what people get when it comes out the other end. We can control the packaging, we can make sure dye lots are correct and all things like that. It's got things are turning around. You're going to your first yarn festival in Montreal in April. Oh, that's fantastic. It's really, really good. It's the same sense here, is that a lot of the mandates are lifted, and it feels, it's kind of exciting and a little bit nerve-wracking all at the same times. Do I sell to Malaysia? I do indeed. I'll sell worldwide. You can go via the post. If there's not a postage option up there, there should be, but I can add it up there for you and I can send it via the post. If your preference is courier, I'm also able to send via courier. So yeah, I can send worldwide. It's pretty straightforward. But yes, very strange that with the mask mandates gone, on the train up, most people were still wearing masks. But in the show, I think because it was quite widely spaced and people were there for several days, a lot of the masks were getting lost. So it's kind of a bit on off here. Some places people are using them, other places people aren't. So Elsa Louise, what is the sweater behind me? This sweater behind me here, can I bring it in here? This is Cork. This was from the first Celtic Knits Club. It's the cardigan version. And there's also a blanket version of Cork as well, but that was the very first Celtic Knits Club. So is there anyone out there who's been working on Clue 2 for the Mystery Knit Along Your Shawl? The chat in Knit Hub is fantastic. I'm really enjoying all of the different chatter and watching people work through the initial setup. There was a few spots that people were kind of running into problems with. One of it was when you're working the quilted stitch pattern, when you've got the slip stitches with the yarn in front, and then the next one is going to be the pull-up stitch, you have to be very careful to bring that yarn back around to the back before you work the pull-up stitch, or the yarn is going to kind of end up draping in the wrong position. In the video, it gives you a hand looking at that, but I think as well, just doing a few and making sure the yarn's in the right position can really help with how it works. The other one that was kind of throwing people a little bit is that when you're starting, the stitch pattern has got a 16 row repeat. But before the first one starts, there's just a setup row, because obviously there's no stitches yet to be able to work in the other stitch pattern. So the first row is a little bit different. So there's a setup row initially before the stitch pattern repeat. Then you keep working through those 16 stitch pattern repeat rows until you reach the end, and then you finish on row 15, and then the very final row is going to look a little bit different. And that's because you are not going to be doing any strands across the front, because there's no more pull-up stitches. So those ones will be knit, but rather than slipped with the yarn in front. So the final row is a replacement row for row 16. So those kind of caused a little bit of confusion. And the other one was the stitch pattern is a 12 stitch repeat, but at the beginning there is one edge stitch, and at the end there's two. And those ones are in addition to the garter stitch edging that is running up along the start and the end. And the rest of the repeats are 12 stitches as you're going through. It's okay once you actually get it set up. It's just sometimes on the actual setup can get a little bit confusing. So it kind of is, yeah, you just need to pay attention and make sure that it lines up. And once those ones are in there, you're okay, and you get a couple of rows in. But initially it can be a little bit confusing, but then once it's there, you're kind of on a run and you can just keep going. So I haven't gotten back to this yet, but I had a second version that I was using for doing some of the demonstrations as I was going through, and I haven't quite finished it yet, but I'll show you what it looks like. It's the one I was doing in the Fino, Corsage, and the Cumulus. Was that, I think it's aubergine? I think it's the aubergine one. This one, of course, if there's somebody kind of came up and discovered that they had a mohair allergy, and the other yarn that's used, the other fluffy yarn, is mohair based. This one is Cumulus and this one is alpaca. So if mohair doesn't agree with you, Cumulus might be an option that works for you. Now it might be the fluff that is the problem as opposed to the fiber, but I've heard of more people with allergies to mohair than any other yarn I've come across. Not sure why, but it's definitely something worth bearing in mind if you haven't worked with mohair before. But this is a very, very soft combination. And it's one of those ones where the colors, even though the tones are very different, the color family is pretty close. And for that reason, I actually found that sometimes it wasn't as dramatic a variation as some of the other versions I'd been working on. So, and you can also see the corsage, particularly when it's small amounts. It'll look different when you get bigger, but in the smaller amounts, there's actually the color, this comes through in kind of more stripy. But as you're going to get longer rows, that'll become quite different, and it'll be a little bit more variation. But this, if I open it up, is the quilted stitch pattern, the first one, and this is it starting at the very inside here. So what you'll also notice here is, look how you get these little waves along here, and then same when you come up to when you get further out and you start doing the increases and you've got a really big increase row, you'll have these very wavy rows, and it looks a little bit strange. And it's even more so as you start moving into the next one, you do a really long increase, because with the circular shawl construction, you've actually got it's one row of increases all the way along, and then after that you've got a big stretch where there isn't any increases. You're just working all of the stitches in the pattern. So that means you're counting on your blocking to actually even those stitches out. So when you block, you need to get it wet and then you pin it and you stretch like crazy, and that really evens it out. And there's a couple of comments there. You're not doing the knit along, you're just waiting on new worsted to arrive to do another set of autumn seasons patterns. Oh, very good. I'm so glad you like those. And you like the purple. And it is a really pretty purple. Nicholas, you're using those and they aren't striping as much. I know and that's the whole thing with hand dye, is that in the actual skeins, there's going to be big variations even in the same color between one dye lot and another, because they're not really dye lots because they've all been hand dyed. And I don't think most of them are quite as striped as this, and you're not going to get the same amount of stripes as you go forward into the bigger one. So I should really keep pushing forward with this. If somehow magically someone can create more hours in the day, because I've got all of these new patterns that I'm working on, and I'm trying to knit a second version of this, or a third one, because I have one from a sample knitter. I've one that I knit when I was working through initially, and then this one I started because I was using it as a sample to knit through, and it seems a terrible shame to just leave it in this sad half-finished state. So I'll probably keep going through and actually finish this one off as well, but it might take me a while. It might be a good one for holiday knits because I've done it before, so I don't have to think about it. And while the stitch pattern does require a little bit of thinking, you can definitely still relax a little bit into it if you've done it before. So that is the quilted shawl pattern, or the quilted feather pattern that I'm going through. Second one, we've got the final increase, and then you've got another big section of the quilted feather, or the quilted pattern, and then you actually move on to a new stitch pattern where you're doing a slip stitch garter stitch. Now anyone who's working on it is going to be very aware that as you're going through it, you're going to be using up a lot of your main color. And what I would say to you is, don't worry about finishing off the main color, because clue 3, when you're working on the edging, it's all going to be in the contrast color. So there's absolutely no problem finishing out all of the main color yarn. So you're good. You don't have to keep any in reserve. You can finish right to the end of your main color for clue 2. So there's a few other things as well going on. Elsa Louise just reminded me of something extra important. And I should actually have grabbed some, and maybe I might show you next week, or maybe I'll go grab some in a minute. We've got the Seasons Club just launched 2 days ago. I kept it, it's been fairly quiet, but I shouldn't really be quiet about it. It's just that because I was so focused on the knit along, I almost forgot to make a big song and dance about the fact that the Spring Seasons Club has just launched. I will bring the yarn on next week just to extend the excitement. But this year we've got Life in Long Grass that's actually doing it with us. If you're already a member, it may have rolled over and the subscription may have been billed for the next one, or it might be a little bit later depending on when you actually put your subscription in. We've got 3 different green options. There's the bright green option, which is a really kind of a nice vibrant green. There's subtle, that's kind of more of an olive green. And then somewhere in the middle, you've got your seasonal one, which is kind of a really pretty middle of the road green color, which is just really nice. So there'll be 3 patterns, and you'll get 2 skeins of yarn, both of them in the same color that you chose. You'll have enough definitely for 2 of the patterns, and 2 of them are kind of either or, so you probably end up, and then you can also knit the other one. If you go for smaller sizes, you may get 3 different patterns out of it. And the Life in the Long Grass yarn that we're using is a yarn called Earth, and it's a mix of merino, yak and nylon. Yak, you know, is really, really soft, very like cashmere, but it does have a kind of a slightly darker beigey color naturally, which means similar to Nua, because we've got, of course, some yak in Nua. And that means that when it's dyed, you've got a very it's kind of a darker overlay really in all of the colors is the best way to be working on it. Is my mother joining Elsa Louise? She loves green. She does love green, but she does not love knitting, I'm afraid. My grandmother was the knitter. My mother is not a crafter. She used to sew, but she hasn't sewn in many years, and she used to crochet, but now only does it under duress. But she writes, but she doesn't craft very much, I'm afraid. But I will make sure to pull the yarns out and show you the colours in person next week. If you have not signed up and you think, I'm not sure if I'm going to want it next season, you can actually just buy a single season installment. And with that, you'll get the yarn, you get the tea, you'll get this another really nice goodie that's coming along with it. You'd have the 3 patterns and all of the workshops that go with it, and you'll be enrolled into the Seasons community and chat forum, which is a private space for Seasons Club members. So if you think that it's going to be something you enjoy, come on in. If you think I want a surprise every 3 months, then just enroll, and every 3 months you will automatically be billed and enrolled in the next season coming up, where you can change at any point. You can say, I want to skip this season, you can cancel it, can pause it for a little bit. So it's very flexible, but it's kind of a nice way to give a little yarny surprise to yourself every season, I think. And who doesn't need a surprise? Elsa Louise, more beeswax candles. I'm not going to give away the surprise. We will circle back around to it again, but we'd probably keep kind of changing things up each one for the moment, and then we'll see how we're going from there. The other thing that's coming up is, of course, on Sunday, I'm doing a fibre-sized chat, which some of you may have signed up, and it's going to be about short rows. Anyone who has been following me for a few years will know that I'm really fond of short rows. I did several classes on short rows in Craftsy. I've got a short row knits book, was one of the books I published with Potter Craft. And the talk is going to be all about short rows and why I love them so much, why they're so useful, and different ways that you can use them. So it's chat rather than a class, where I'll talk around the subject. I'll do a few small little demos. I'll show lots of examples of different ways you can use them, and it should be a lot of fun. Yeah, I like talking about short rows, so I'm really looking forward to kind of jumping in and talking with you all about that. I will, next Thursday, pull those yarns on for the Seasons Clubs to show off the colours. In the meantime, if you're curious and you want to sign up, then just hop onto the website. You'll actually see them. They're in a banner on the front page, so you can't miss them. And it's only going to be open for a couple more weeks, and then it is closed until the next season. So we only open them for a few weeks before the Seasons Club goes and ships, to make sure that we have the stock for what we need, and it's not, it only opens for just this very short period. So if you think you'd like to jump in, now is the time to go in, or else you're going to miss it. So if there's any other questions you have about, Eileen, you were saying you love the patterns in the short row book. You've made several from the book. Oh, thank you. As I actually really enjoyed all the patterns in it, and it was a very logical book to put together for me, because it covered about 3 different areas. The first one is, let's take a look at all of the different types of short rows there are. Then the next one is, what are the different things you can use for short rows? And then the third thing it looked at was, what types of short rows work best for particular types of pattern? And then following on from all that was just a collection of patterns in each section, telling you what short row type I'm using, and then also from there kind of telling you if you're going to substitute, what ones might be good substitutions. So I hadn't really seen anything that was exactly like that kind of broke it down in that kind of detail, but it's the way I think about short rows. So it was really satisfying to put a whole book together that broke it down in a logical way of thinking about it for me, you know. So I'm going to say goodbye to you all today, and I will post this up. So if you have any questions in relation to what we're talking about when you're watching the video, just pop them up and I'll jump in and answer. So, bye.